So next
Sorry, I wasn't even, I was miles away. Sorry.
Ready? So next up, this question.
Yeah?
And you were laughing there.
We're all watching you, mate.
Okay.
Happy
Ready?
birthday.
Thank you.
Coming up, what does change look like for media agencies in 2017? Hello and welcome to ID.com's MediaSnack episode 61. So this episode we're devoting to talking about change as it relates to media agencies. Yeah. You'll have seen in recent weeks that we've been focusing on change, which as we announced is our word of the year. So you can watch episode 59 to understand that. And we looked at three areas that might impact. Yeah. Last week we dealt with the impact of change on the advertiser side. And this week we're going to talk specifically about agencies.
That's right. And so we received a number of questions from the agency side. Yep. We've selected three, one from a network CEO, one from a media planner, and interestingly one from a publisher that we're going to address.
All looking at how media agencies might change or adapt to change in the coming year. Yeah. All coming up on MediaSnack in just the time it takes to eat a sandwich. Okay, let's start with a question that came from the CEO of a network media agency. Okay, and the question is, we are getting squeezed between the demands for holding company returns and then clients seeking lower and lower fees. The reality of transparency is that we go bankrupt. How do you see this new business model actually working?
Yeah, and I think this is the crux of the matter, and this is the source of the problem that we've had to deal with now in the last 18 months around trust and transparency. The biggest issue is clients shouldn't be looking to squeeze the agencies on fees. Okay, it should be an honest and fair and open discussion on what level of remuneration the agency needs to manage that business appropriately. Yeah. And in exchange for that, then transparency should be delivered. Okay. Where advertisers go in and continue to squeeze agencies on fee, the result is more opaque practices. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and so for those agencies, not all agencies, but some or few agencies who, let's say, who may derive significant incomes, not from the client, but perhaps from the vendor side, they're under huge pressure to maintain the opaque practices, because if you've got shareholders who are seeing healthy media incomes, and those aren't coming from the client side, but they're coming from the business model and perhaps from the vendor side, you don't want transparency. We heard an analyst say to us, you know, transparency is not good for investors in these groups. Absolutely. If a lot of income is being derived from non-transparent practice.
But I think advertisers, I think agencies want to be paid fairly, and you know, the desire to have undisclosed income is only there simply because they don't feel that they're going to be paid properly and appropriately by the advertisers. Yeah. If that was to change, if that discussion sat at a very senior level and it was very honest and open, and the advertiser was open to paying appropriately, then I think that there would be less desire to perhaps secure income and revenue streams through undisclosed means. Yeah.
So that means, again, it comes back to what we were talking about last week, which is it's behavioural change on the advertiser side. Yeah. So, but you know, to play devil's advocate on that is the marketer would say, well, an agency needs to account for the value it creates before I'm going to invest in that, before I'm going to buy that. That's right. At the moment, I might pay, you know, a 2% commission, but if you want me to pay substantially more than that, or pay, you know, a transparent fee which accounts for more than that commission, then I need to believe that you're going to drive a business outcome. I need to understand the value that you're going to create. So I think for a network CEO who's saying you're being squeezed on both sides, Well, you can't, in some ways, you've got to decide what kind of business you're going to be. You're either going to be wholly focused on the outcomes of the advertiser and be able to account for the value that you create through, data-fueled insight, strategy, planning, efficient buying, those kind of things. Or you have a business model which is going to, max revenue from the other side, and then don't be surprised if advertisers don't have great trust in you and won't pay you for value that they can't see.
Absolutely, but I think that there is no better time and no greater desire to have these very open and frank discussions at both advertiser and agency side. So I think we'll see more of those taking place. And all it takes is a few brave advertisers to set a precedent, and we'll see things change.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for the question.
Right, next up, this question comes from an agency media planner, and this is going to you because you were once an agency media planner. I'm a bit tired of the negativity and the bad headlines around media. I think we do good work for clients. How does this get resolved? Where does it end?
Yeah, and I've got a lot of sympathy for that type of question, which we hear quite a bit. And we hear it from agency leadership as well, don't we? Which is like, it's quite demotivating for people in the agencies to hear these kind of negative headlines. And if you work in a media agency, it's fair that you might be getting a bit sick of everybody's saying that it's dodgy and untransparent and corrupt and all this, and it's all about rebates, and I think it's more or most acute when you're a planner, because you're really quite removed from the commercial and the trading side, and I know from experience, you're often focused on, you're so acutely focused on trying to help your clients achieve their business objectives or their marketing objectives, and so that is your focus. And it can be, I can sympathise that it would be quite demoralising with all the negativity around there. How does it play out? It depends probably which type of agency you're in. I think there are probably two scenarios. There's the optimistic scenario, which says, you're doing great work, and increasingly, as advertisers take media more seriously and they see it as an investment in growth, they are going to want smart people like you to provide them data-fueled insights and strategic plans for media which unlock competitive advantage and makes media more accountable for growth, and therefore you're going to be a hero and celebrated, and the agency will be paid, the client will pay the agency based on the value that you create. That's great, I hope that happens. An alternative reality is that perhaps media, the term media agency is now, all this negativity, if you like, or the lack of trust or the suspicion around agency practice, perhaps it's reached a point where it's quite hard to come back from that. Perhaps the prevailing wisdom amongst advertisers is that there's something not working with the current media agency model, because it's become so wholly focused on the commercial. It's become so obsessed with price and discount and auditing that it's not something which advertisers see as strategic and insight-driven and objective and value-creating. So perhaps the brand of media agencies is just a little bit tarnished now, beyond repair. And so what does that mean for a planner in a media agency? Well, the opportunity is to then try and disrupt from within, I think. So I think we'll either see different types of businesses get involved in that more strategic part of marketing. You'll have, it's only a matter of time, I think, till the consulting companies start offering that up, management consultants, people like that. I think we've started to see burgeoning independent kind of media planning, much more strategic agencies coming up. They're going to be disruptive, and we're seeing, I think, within even the large groups, the establishment of like disrupting from within. Hearts and Science at Omnicom is a good example. We've used that a lot, but there are others now coming through that are disrupting the existing model. And perhaps if you're a planner and you really believe passionately about doing great work, maybe it's time to move out of what's known as a big media buying agency and find your place where you can really genuinely kind of add value to a client.
You had me sold on the more optimistic.
Yeah, well, there we go. We're a bit yin and yang on that stuff.
But I think you're right. I think we're at a juncture, aren't we? We're at a crossroads. My perspective, my instinct on this is that if you're you're a young planner in the business, continue to invest in doing the best work that you possibly can for your client. Trust and rely on your senior management to have the right kind of conversations with clients that will kind of redress the balance.
And get the right briefs.
Yeah, absolutely. Be inspired, but don't ever compromise on the quality of work that you do, because that's certainly a slippery slope. So we'll wait and see, but that's a great question.
So the final question we'll deal with actually is one that we got from a publisher, interestingly, talking about the change of the agency model. And the question was, who is going to change this, was the question. And then they said, for some publishers to survive the next few years, the media buying model needs to change to make sure that a fair amount of income reaches us as a publisher, I think they mean.
Absolutely. And I completely sympathise with this as a question. And this is a major issue. Reports suggest that in some cases, the publishers receive only 30% of the price of the inventory that they're selling because of the media supply chain. Okay,
and that was the test, the Guardian did that test, didn't they, where they realised they were only getting 30%.
They bought their own inventory and they realised that they're only receiving 30% of the cost of it because of the supply chain and all the different elements and how they thin slice that kind of revenue. How are we going to change this? Who's going to be asking the tough questions? Well, I think it's probably the advertisers that need to instigate it. Again, without putting all the responsibility onto the brand side, I think it is their responsibility. And they should be asking the question of their agencies, what does this value chain or supply chain look like? And interrogating all of the different elements and the value that they provide to that process. And if they're not providing any value to it, then why is revenue being sucked out of the process? And once you tighten that up, what is left should be going to the publishers. And that feels fair and appropriate.
Agree. And the question didn't come from The Guardian, by the way, but it did come from what you might call a premium publisher online. And I think for those premium publishers that are really finding this quite difficult because they're being squeezed on both sides. They're having to invest, like their cost of creating content is quite high. This is related again to the kind of fake news thing we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. They're having to invest a lot in creating the content, but yet they aren't able to kind of really necessarily premiumize their audience. And I think one of the big issues or challenges of this is advertisers being focused on audience-based buying. So they just want to obviously reach certain types of people, but they don't really care specifically where that is. My inclination as a marketer would be, actually I do care the environment and the context in which my message sits. I think it's important. I think that's the art of media planning. I think that's why planners might be frustrated because you do a lot of your strategic work and then the ads could be appearing in any kind of number of places, not least undesirable places, but just actually places which don't create great affinity for your brand or are not the right environment for your message. There needs to be more control by the advertiser on that. You need to specifically say, maybe you don't want to just do audience-based buying, because that will tend to find that ad dollars flow to the cheapest places of reaching certain individuals, perhaps rather than the best places to reach those people, the best place for your brand. So the premiumness is getting flushed out of the system, and so I'm not surprised that then publishers, of course they're struggling because their costs are high and their income is dropping, and they're having to pay to generate more and more audience So really squeezed. And it would be a terrible shame if a significant kind of news outlet or major publisher was not able to survive this business model.
Absolutely. And the one thing that gets compromised is the content, the quality of the content, which sounds crazy.
Great. Thank you so much for the questions. Next week, we're going to be looking about how change will impact the accountability and measurement of media in 2017. But that's all for this week. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Have a good weekend.